Hello, my name is Lexi Davis. I'm a self-discovery coach, a yoga and meditation instructor, a love enthusiast, and a really playful human being. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this is Heart Snuggles, a holistic wellness podcast where I invite guests to drop into their heart space through authentic conversations and compassionate intentions, all in mini cuddly episodes, hoping that you connect to your truth in the most authentic version of yourself. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you're here for another day at Heart Snuggles. Today, I brought a special guest, and I'd love if you would introduce yourself.
Yes, so thank you for having me. I often go by KP. KP is short for Kailash Pati, which is a Sanskrit name I was given a little while back. So what to say? Well, I reside currently in Santa Cruz, California. I'm involved with an organization called the Hanuman Fellowship, and the fellowship owns and operates various centers and spaces, mostly in California, but there is a orphanage in India that's operated, as well as a retreat, yoga and retreat center in Salt Springs, Canada. And so I'm here at Pacific Cultural Center, which is again in Santa Cruz. I'm actually going to be moving soon to Mount Madonna Center, which is sort of the large, like, kind of mothership of the whole thing. Yeah, a bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Lawton, Oklahoma. I'm one of 8 siblings, so large family. Went to university in Ottawa, Kansas, and so kind of I'm from the Southwest, Midwest, spent a lot of time there, and then I've been in California for about a little over 5 years now. And in that time, I've really dedicated a lot of my time and energy to my practice of meditation and yoga, as well as study. I'm a 500-hour certified yoga teacher in the classical Ashtanga yoga. So yeah, that's just a little ramble about me.
I know it's always so hard to summarize yourself in like 1 minute. So thank you for that. Can you tell us the process of getting your name?
Sure. Basically, I spent time at above Mount Madonna. There's a Sankat Mochan Hanuman temple, and up there, there's a couple elders who basically were given some materials to that support one in finding like the name, because basically the idea is that it's based on like your Vedic astrology, and so there's certain like syllables related to that astrology, which I don't understand, just to be very frank. But basically, so someone took like my name, birthday, the year, location, all of that stuff, and came back and said, "Oh, this is your name. It's Kailash Pati," which Kailash Pati means Lord or Master of Kailash, which refers to Mount Kailash, and this is one of Shiva's many names, and so I'm named. So that's the name I was given, and then pretty much like the day after, I was called KP, and so all of our names often get shortened, and so I usually just go by KP. But that's how I got it, just through elders at the temple that I'm involved in. I'm also part of why I'm moving to Mount Madonna. I'll be just studying and serving at the temple complex.
That's so amazing. I've never heard of that before. And something I want to study more is definitely Vedic astrology as well. So how did you enter this world of where you are now?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of different ways I could sort of respond to that. On the one hand, like, I don't really know. It just kind of seemed to have happened and sort of, continue to unfold and ripen in the way that it has. But going back to my time at university, I had a philosophy professor who was really presented a lot of interesting material to us, and it was very, at least for me at the time, was sort of non-traditional. That a lot of programs or schools focus a lot on like Western, mostly exclusively like Western philosophy a lot of the time. But he had introduced Ken Wilber's integral theory, and in that class, we talked a little bit about like meditation and stuff like that. And it got me really interested in the practice. And, I felt like I was doing a lot to take care of my body. I was studying, so doing a lot to sort of take care of my mind and intellect. But, felt like spiritually there was, something I wanted to give more time to that. And so I saw meditation possibly as a sort of doorway to do that. And so I went to him during his office hours and just said, hey, I want to learn more about meditation. And he said, okay, and gave me some tools, and sort of we began to develop a relationship in that context. And kind of from that moment, I went home, started practicing, and from there kind of evolved into, again, a lot of meditation practice, a lot of reading and studying of various philosophies rooted like different spiritual traditions from East and West, from India to Japan to various schools of thought, but definitely got found a lot of resonance and a lot of the sort of Indian spiritual traditions, and from there I ended up here at PCC, which again is rooted in the classical Ashtanga Yoga. We have our beloved teacher, sort of friend, Baba Haridas, who came over during the 70s. He was born in India, as a yogi there, and some young Americans that went over to India because Ram Dass is Be Here Now, Baba Haridas is mentioned, and so I think through them reading about him, they were curious to meet him, so they went over there, they found him, invited him to America until he came, and then lived the rest of his life here and taught and inspired a lot of what's what we're currently engaged with now. And so then, being here, eventually went to yoga teacher training and sort of studied formally and spent a lot of time, again, just studying and immersed in it, kind of exposed to different teachings. But so over the past couple of years, been more formal study, and then also, again, a lot of just like personal unfoldment. And where I started with a lot of like just sitting meditation, he's evolved now to incorporating like a lot more like chanting and stuff. And so it's definitely been, it's been an adventure, an exploration that continues.
Yeah, it's never ending. I think that's the best part. It's keeps going. And at first I was like, what? Like, how's there not an end to this? But now I'm like, wait, this is actually the best part. And yeah, also yoga training. I've only done 200 hours, so I can't even imagine what a 500 hour would be, but it's so healing and so beautiful to see like what you can uncover when you do that work. And like just learning about the ancient philosophies too is so fascinating. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about chanting for people who may have not experienced that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So there's a couple different like forms that this can take. One is what's called japa. That's basically the repetition of a name or a mantra, and generally, it could be it's usually a name of God. And so there's, in just my understanding of the sort of Indian like spiritual landscape, there are many, many deities. I think, actually literally millions. And so there's space for one to find, a deity that resonates, or to sort of choose the deity that one will worship. And then to take on the simple practice of repeating the name of that deity, either out loud or also, mentally repeating it. And often people use like beads, some sort of mala, which I often have on me. There's also the practice of kirtan, and kirtan is often done in a group where folks sing bhajans, sing songs together, often in call and response, where someone repeats a line and the group will chant it back. And so it's again, there's many different levels to it. On the one hand, there's the idea that the name itself, there's an energy or power in the syllable, in the sound. And so by chanting the name, like one is invoking that energy. And so each sound having a unique vibration, unique quality in which one can invite in and, connect with that sort of energy within oneself. And then definitely for myself, I often chant the Hanuman Chalisa, which is 40 verses written by Tulsi Das, who was an Indian poet and very, very, well known. And that sort of outlines Hanuman's involvement in the Ramayana. And, I find that to be very inspirational like story, just what he represents, and his involvement there and the symbolism involved, as well as just like, again, getting into the chanting. And I play the harmonium along when I chant usually. And so, getting just the music and getting into that flow. But I speak for myself, often when chanting, or at least pretty much always when chanting, at least my experience at this point, there's a lot of heart opening, which a lot of people speak to, that sort of opening us up to the love that's present here, which doesn't necessarily solve all our problems, of course, or all our challenges, but at least we're able to hold some of that from a loving space, and sort of get out. And on the one hand, it's also like a great way of like getting out of maybe the mental stuff, reminiscing about stuff, or worrying about something, and being able to kind of drop in, and just chant, just sing, just feel, just to be here. But yeah, definitely a really wonderful practice. So I would say to anybody who feels a sort of like, or maybe just enjoy singing with folks, or just, it feels a sort of devotional inclination, I think it's be a good practice to explore.
I agree. I've only experienced like 3 kirtans, but every time it's rocked my world. It's the power of like, the group together is so healing. And I've always been so afraid to share my voice. So it was really beautiful to just like let that go, and to let my voice be heard, and the power of community too. It's so amazing. Would you be able to offer like a chant, just an example of a chant that someone could try, or how they could find one that would resonate with them?
Yeah, I think let's see. Well, on the one hand, I think one could look up, well, depending on one's, like, again, if one's affiliation or involvement with a certain like spiritual tradition, whatever that might look like. It could be, again, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever it might be. Just look at, like, again, the songs that are available to chant, and kind of, try out some different ones and see what really resonates and speaks to you. Like, find that, that meaning that speaks to you. On the other hand, at least for me, what resonates with me, I definitely listen to a lot of Krishna Das, and that was kind of my like sort of entry into kirtan. I know for a lot of folks in the West, that's the case. So that was one thing for me, was just listening to people chant, a lot of just even just in my car as I was driving, listening to stuff, and finding, again, like certain things resonated, and obviously some more than others. So there's that. And then, perhaps something I'd offer, one of the chants that I like to chant is very simply Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. And just repeat that. Repeat the mantra, repeat the chant. But there's so many, again, and definitely for me, always important to wanting folks to begin to explore, again, what resonates with them. And so I know for not everybody is, will Hanuman resonate with, but perhaps it's Christ, or it's, or someone, if they are, follow Islam, to, again, find the songs and those chants from your tradition that really, again, that open you up and speak to you.
Thank you so much. I've heard that. I've done that chant before. And I like that one a lot. Can you tell us what Hanuman, like what Hanuman means to you?
Sure.
What he represents.
Yeah. So Hanuman, often the shorter version of the symbolism is Hanuman represents like pure devotion to God. And so in the Ramayana, the sort of symbolism, we have Lord Ram, who represents God, and then Hanuman representing devotion, and then Sita, whom they are trying to save, represents the individual soul, the ego. And so the idea being that, obviously in the story, Hanuman is supporting Ram and saving Sita. So the idea being that sort of like through devotion, we're able to bring together God and the universal and the individual come together through devotion. It's one path. And so Hanuman represents that devotion, and he also represents like sort of boundless energy and strength. He's very strong, as well as a lot of humility. And so Hanuman in the story is kind of quite comical, actually, in the he forgets what he's capable of. And so it requires someone to remind him of what he can do. And he's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And there's like an example of at one point he like jumps across the ocean, and they're trying to figure out how they're gonna get across this ocean to find Sita. And someone just says, oh, Hanuman, you can jump. And then he's, oh yeah. And he just jumps across the ocean. So he's sort of that like, kind of humble, that humility. There's also another really beautiful story, I think, speaks to like the quality of devotion that Hanuman represents, or embodies. And that's after, again, I'm not going into the details, but after they save Sita and Ram are reunited and they go back to the kingdom. Hanuman is given by Sita, I believe it's a necklace, some piece of jewelry, and he starts to like sniff it and examine it and starts to like pull it apart, and eventually breaks it and like throws it away. And then people are kind of taken aback of how could you behave this way, that Sita just gave you this, this very special gift. And he said, well, my Lord's name was not on it. So I looked for my Lord's name when it was not there. And eventually someone says, well, what about your body? And he invites someone to put their ear to his heart, to his chest. And they heard in his heartbeat the repetition of Ram, Ram, Ram. And then there's also the very famous image of him like opening his chest. And there's an image of Lord Ram, and often depicted Lord Ram and Sita actually inside his heart. And so that's, again, little great devotion. Often very simple, but there's different, various layers there.
The stories I love listening to the stories about each deity. Yet there's, like you said, there's so many. So I've only heard a few, but that's such a great reminder. And everyone has that. Like we all have to be reminded of our greatness, and that's so many great lessons and just what you just said. So thank you for sharing that. And isn't the splits Hanuman's pose and like half splits?
Yeah, so Hanuman Asana, is the full splits, which I think is like I haven't quite found this, but I think it's related to him like jumping across the ocean and his legs spread. So yeah, that's which can you do that? Can you get into that asana?
Not completely, no, but I'm practicing. Yeah. And I love that there's so many ways to relate to them, like through the chants, through the poses, there's so many ways to connect to them. And you can also find which way resonates with you in that way too, once you explore the deities more.
Totally. Yeah. It's there's so many, I think it just spiritually look at various traditions. There's so many, often our teacher would say, so many tricks of the mind, so many ways to engage with various practices, whether it be chanting, whether it be yoga asana or pranayama or meditation or, read, whatever it might be, or a form of worship one might take or utilize, that there's, so many ways for us to bring more awareness to our mind, become more aware of our attachments, more and more ways to, drop into the heart, and ultimately also just so many ways to, bring ourselves back to the present moment. So it's quite wonderful that there are such a plethora of means available to us.
I agree. And that's different points. I like accessing different things. So that's why I like that there's so much instead of just one way. So if someone is so new to this and hasn't started, where do you think they could start or like find resources to begin?
With chanting and specifically, or just with?
With chanting, and also just like this spirituality realm and connecting with self.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, obviously, one thing, recognizing this looks so different for people. But I say, speaking from at least from myself, I definitely started with sitting meditation. But also a big thing for me was like finding someone that I was able to trust in some way, sort of help me kind of navigate that. And I know for myself, I do feel that it can be extremely helpful to have some sort of teacher, some sort of support that could even be a community. But there's so much available to us. It can be kind of confusing and messy to navigate all of that. If you just look at all the different books, all the different events you could go to, the workshops, how many teachers there are just in the world of yoga, just how many, there's teachers all over the place. And so it's kind of like, hey, where do you start? And it's kind of tricky. But I think the biggest thing for me, my exploration thus far has been like taking the time to practice something, try something. Reading is great. I think that's can be a great tool. Books are really useful, but like taking the time to actually practice, that could be a simple breathing meditation or a chant, but just like try it. And from there, I think at least I have a certain trust that if we're making that effort, then things will, our own sort of innate sort of knowing, will become refined, and we'll kind of get a sense of like what resonates, what doesn't, and sort of what direction we might move. And like I said, and definitely, I think we have that teacher within, and also finding, those teachers, those supports that are outside of ourselves as well is a great benefit.
Thank you so much. I used to get so caught up in the learning and not practicing. And I was like, why am I not getting results? I learned everything. And it's the practice is so important, like more to me, more than like reading about it. And like you said, I love reading as well, but I find that when I'm actually experiencing it within, like so much, that's where the real magic is. That was a really great reminder.
Absolutely.
And do you offer any services right now?
I do. So I teach, right now I'm teaching one online meditation class on, one on Wednesday evenings at 7 through a platform called Black to Yoga, which can be found online, also through on Instagram. And I do teach privately as well. I have like a small online group on Tuesdays at usually around 6. Sometimes move the time, but usually around 6 in the evenings on Tuesdays. Teach a small meditation. And my classes always incorporate pranayama, like breath work, as well as semi-guided meditation. And then for my longer classes, I'll do a little space for shavasana at the end. But right now, that's it. I'm also getting ready to move in the next couple months, so I haven't been looking to pick up any like commitments until I kind of get settled and kind of figure out what my flow is there. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And then I do offer when people want to like connect privately as well, whenever that's people want to do that.
Thank you. And how can people find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram. My username is Zach Allen 108. So ZACALAN 108. You can find me. That's probably the best place to find me. And then from there, if you're interested in connect, feel free to shoot me a direct message. I'm always happy to support in little ways I can.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your beautiful voice. I hope more people go find you, and I'll have to definitely try out one of your meditation classes.
Sounds good. Well, Lexi, thank you for having me, and appreciate the space to share with you.